Welcome back to Maya. Make sure to subscribe to our channel to never miss an update. Additionally, consider subscribing to my Patreon to get access to these features and much more. My name is Tessa Marie Marshall. No, it isn't a shortened version of something longer. I doubt that name was on my original birth certificate, but I can't prove it. I also question whether the original document listed me as female, but my current one does, and it's been that way for as long as it matters. A blood test could confirm otherwise, but it's irrelevant now. Seeing me, you'd likely think the certificate was fake. My mother passed away giving birth to me, and while I was still a toddler, my father remarried. Before I was old enough to remember him, Dad died in an accident. My stepmother, Nancy, had 2 daughters of her own, and my early years were under the influence of all 3 women. Diana is 10 years older than me, and Barbara, or Zoe, is 6 years older. I've never understood why this happened to me, but there's no changing it now. After Dad's death, Nancy decided she wanted to raise 3 girls, not 2 girls and a boy. She arranged for a surgeon to alter my anatomy to appear female, and hormone treatments continued the transformation. I don't know exactly when the treatment started, but I was only a few years old when the surgeon performed the operation. I remember only a bit of the pain that lingered for a long time. Nancy, whom I called Mumsy, wasn't content to let me grow up like the other girls. By the time I was in the 3rd grade at my private school, I was already laced into a corset which I've worn day and night since. Now, I have a 13 inches waist and can't stand straight without a heavily boned corset. My spine and supporting muscles were never allowed to develop properly. Just before my 17th birthday, I graduated school. Mumsy and my sisters had ensured that all my time was devoted to my studies. I thought my life would improve afterward. It did change, but not in ways that most would consider better. On the morning of my birthday, Mumsy told me I wouldn't have breakfast because it would interfere with the anesthetic for my surgery. "Please, Mumsy, I'm really hungry," I pleaded. Food was on my mind more than the surgery itself. "Tessa, be a good girl and take your bath. Wear what I've laid out for you," she said with a smile. Years of strict discipline had taught me that obedience was better than facing punishment for resistance. "Yes, Mumsy. Could you please tell me why I need this operation?" "I'm not ill." "You're not ill, Tessa. I want you to be even prettier than you are now. Go upstairs and do as I've asked." I curtsied and left the kitchen. Once I started the bathwater, I took off my robe and unfastened my night corset. Only when sitting on the edge of the tub did I dare to remove my mules. I've worn high heels for so long that walking barefoot, even briefly, is painful for my legs and feet. When I came out of the bathroom, Mumsy and Zoe were in my bedroom. "Good morning, Tessa," Zoe greeted cheerfully. Mumsy went to the closet while Zoe opened my corset drawer to pick a fresh one. "I'll lace you up this morning." "Thank you," I replied. Although I could do it myself, it was always easier when someone else helped. I moved to the wall and gripped the bar installed there while Zoe wrapped the white satin around my torso and fastened the busk. "Adjust your chest," Zoe instructed. No one else was allowed to do this, so I lifted and settled my chest into the small cups designed to lift and support them. At that time, my chest was a size any girl would be proud of, about a C cup. As Zoe began Clear's throat, tightening the corset, I shifted what flesh I could from underneath the constricting fabric. She measured my waist and tied off when it reached just under 16 in, which was my usual waist size. "Thank you, Zoe. I appreciate your help," I said sincerely as I tiptoed to my stool. "You're welcome." Mumsy had already laid out my stockings and panties for the day. I started drying my long hair while Zoe knelt to roll up the sheer nylons and pull them up my legs. 3 hours later, dressed in a loose cap and cotton gown over my corset, I allowed the nurse to help me onto a gurney. "I'm going to strap you in so you don't fall off, dear." "Okay," she said with a smile. "Just relax." I was covered with a sheet and secured with webbed straps over my chest, hips and shins. I remember nothing after they lifted me onto the operating table and placed a mask over my face. When I woke up, I was strapped down much more securely. Thick leather cuffs were fastened around my wrists and ankles, stretching me out on the bed. The straps were tight enough to restrict movement, but not cause pain. I couldn't bring my hands close to my body or roll over. I was in pain, my chest felt like it was on fire, and the itching was unbearable. Looking down, I couldn't see any immediate changes from the operation, though I suspected it had something to do with my chest. Everything looked the same under the tautly stretched sheet and blanket. I was also incredibly thirsty. When I pressed the call button pinned within reach, a nurse appeared several minutes later. "Hi Tessa. How are you feeling?" she asked with a smile. "I'm very thirsty and my chest hurts and itches," I told her. She filled a plastic bottle from a pitcher and brought it to my lips. "I'll check with your doctor in the morning to see if we can give you something for the discomfort. For now, you'll just have to bear with it, Tessa." I was unhappy to hear that, but at least the water relieved my thirst. "Why am I strapped to the bed like this?" "To prevent you from opening your stitches," she said matter-of-factly. "You'll be like this for a few days, so you'd better get used to it, dear." She tucked the covers in and adjusted my pillow. "I doubt you'll ever get used to your new chest, though. It's going to be much larger," she added. "Larger? Why? They're big enough already," I protested. "Well, someone else didn't think so," she replied. The next afternoon, Mumsy and both my sisters visited me. Fortunately, the itching had eased somewhat thanks to the spray they'd applied every few hours. I had to ask why my chest had been enlarged. "Because I wanted them to be," Diana answered, surprising me. "As soon as you heal, I'm taking you home with me, you little brat." Of the three, Diana and I had the least in common. She was the one who tattled on me growing up and was often the one to punish me. We did not get along. "You should see your face, sis," Zoe laughed. "I don't think the little girl likes the idea very much, Angie," Zoe joked. "That's fine with me. I wouldn't expect her to. Tessa just needs to obey, and if she doesn't..." Diana's voice trailed off as she gave me a wicked grin, a look I was all too familiar with. "You know, Julia is really looking forward to having you," Diana said. Julia, my sister's live-in girlfriend, was someone I disliked intensely. "She sends her love. Bet. You know she doesn't like me, Diana." As I spoke, Mumsy and Barbara laughed. "That's what makes it so much fun for us," Diana chuckled. "I hear Julia has big plans for her new maid," Mumsy chimed in. "The big chest is just the beginning, Tessa. Her new maid. You can't be serious." I struggled to sit up, but the leather straps held me down. Diana reached for the call button as I continued to fight against the restraints. "The maid seems a bit agitated," Diana said when the nurse appeared. "Could you tighten all of her straps to prevent any injury?" Without hesitation, the nurse complied and added a wide belt around my waist. "Please don't loosen those. I'll be very upset if I find out you did." "Understand." "Yes'm," the nurse responded to my sister's order. They kept me restrained for 3 more days. Besides the limited movement, the worst part was using a bedpan for my bowels while a catheter handled things for my bladder. A couple of hours after my doctor removed some stitches and told me I was being released, Julia and Diana arrived. The itching had gone, but the deeper soreness remained. "You look so helpless, Tessa." "I'm going to keep you that way often," Julia said, her tone unique. "Now, are you going to behave, or do you need a demonstration of what else was done to you besides giving you that big chest?" Julia held up a device that looked like a TV remote. "I think you should demonstrate, love," Diana suggested. Julia pressed a button on the device she was holding and I screamed. I was screaming even before I lost consciousness. When I woke up, my body was drenched in sweat. A searing pain that began in my private area had jolted me when the device was activated. What did you do to me?" I gasped, struggling to catch my breath. "Right behind your clitoris is a receiver connected to the main nerve there. You don't need to know all the details, dear. Just the outcome," Julia said, putting the transmitter back in her purse. "It can also receive a phone signal, much like a pager. You will never be out of my control." Diana called a nurse to remove the catheter and free me from the bed. With my legs still restrained, my sister helped me sit up. This was my first real look at how much had been added to my chest. I gasped in disbelief. "They're enormous," I exclaimed. My chest, though not yet fully swollen, looked the size of volleyballs. Before I could react further, I felt my arms being guided into heavy canvas sleeves. I couldn't resist as my sister fastened the many straps of the straitjacket up my back. "I don't want to hurt you. I really don't, not right now," Julia said softly as she folded my arms under my new chest and threaded the long sleeves through leather loops on each side. Diana crossed the sleeve straps behind me and handed them to Julia. "How uncomfortable you are in this is entirely up to you, Tessa," Julia said as she fastened the strap from one sleeve through the buckle of the other. She pulled it tight and secured it neatly. The side straps were then tightened, pressing my arms against the corset. Before helping me off the bed, they fitted my feet with lace-up boots featuring extremely high heels and joined the leather cuffs with a strap, allowing only very short steps. Once I was standing, the strap of the straitjacket was pulled tight. "We brought a cape for you. That will be all unless you make it necessary to add a gag and a discipline helmet," Julia said. I had no idea what a discipline helmet was, but it didn't sound like something I wanted to experience. "I'll behave, Julia. I promised." "Good. From now on, it's mistress for you," she said, making it clear that an answer was expected. Covered with a long black rubber cape, I walked between them out of the clinic and to Julia's car, where I was placed in the back seat. "We're heading home now. Do you need to stop for anything, Diana?" Julia asked as she held the door for my sister. Since Julia and I had never gotten along, I had only visited their house a few times and never received a grand tour. I was led into the house from the garage and Julia first showed me a control panel in the kitchen. She pressed a button and a light switched from green to red. "All the doors and windows have sensors to detect you," Julia explained. "Unless you enjoyed what happened at the clinic, I strongly advise you not to try leaving the house without permission when the system is armed." "You're keeping me imprisoned here?" I asked, shocked. "That's illegal. You can't do that." "I can," she replied flatly. "As of 6 years ago, owning slaves is legal. Since you're over 16, not yet of legal age, and both of your natural parents are deceased, I purchased you through a completely legal transaction. I can do whatever I want with you." Julia almost seemed to relish the moment. "I've owned you for a year now. It just wasn't deemed important to inform you until now. Do you understand your situation now, Tessa?" "Yes, mistress," I replied, though I was uncomfortable with the reality of the law she referred to. I had never imagined it would apply to me. Julia then led me to a door between the kitchen and the garage. "This is your room," she said, opening the door. I walked through a room about 12 foot square. To knot the stark cell I had the straitjacket. "Before we left this morning, I laid out the clothes I want you to wear. You'll need to tighten your corsets another inch for your clothes to fit properly from now on, Tessa." Julia seemed to take pleasure in telling me this. "First, take a bath. You're quite smelly. Then get yourself ready for me. I'll come for you." She glanced at the wall clock. "At 2 o'clock, we'll discuss my expectations then." She turned to leave. "You'll find most of your clothes and other belongings are here now." She offered a pleasant smile before departing. With less than 2 hours to prepare, I followed her instructions without exploring the closet or dresser that had come from my previous home. Most of the furnishings in my new room were those I had used for several years. It was refreshing to bathe, but I struggled to adjust to the much larger chest I now had. Without the small supporting cups, the weight of my chest and the healing incisions caused discomfort until I managed to hook on the black corset laid out on my bed. Having never laced myself as tightly as instructed, it took considerable effort to achieve the desired 15 inches waist. The pain was more intense than I remembered. Diana accompanied Julia when she entered my room. I felt awkward and exposed in the black maid's uniform with white trim and accessories that I had been given. "Hold up your petticoats, Tessa," Julia instructed. She revealed a polished steel contraption she had brought with her. "Do you know what this is?" I shook my head. "No, mistress." "It's a chastity belt," Julia said. "It's the only underwear you'll be allowed to wear from now on. Lift your right foot," she directed. As I stepped between the bands, Julia adjusted the belt to fit around my hips. My maid does not engage in any form of sexual gratification, including self-pleasure, she said while carefully positioning my labia into the separated slots between the thigh area. Diana, can you pull this up a bit higher? Julia requested. I felt Diana spreading my rear cheeks so the steel could fit snugly against my tailbone. Is it too tight anywhere? Are you pinched? Julia asked. No, mistress, I replied. The reality of being unable to experience the pleasure I was used to made me feel very self-pitying. Why must I wear this? I asked, trying to understand. I told you before, Julia said as she closed the rear lock and fitted the secondary shield over my protruding lips. The final lock clicked ominously into place. I don't want you to experience any pleasure here. Clear's throat. You can lower your petticoats now, Julia said, motioning for Diana to lead us to the door. Come along, pet. Walking in the extremely high-heeled shoes required a new way of moving. The rigid band forced my thighs apart, and I could feel my cheeks jiggling almost as much as my exposed chest. Sit, Julia commanded, pointing to a stool in front of her vanity once we were in their bedroom. Using her skills as a top model, she quickly transformed my makeup into a more elaborate look. I think the green and gold eyeshadows complement your eyes and match your auburn hair nicely, Julia commented as she applied black eyeliner. You'll need to recreate this look every day until I decide otherwise. After coating my lips with a deep purple color, outlined in black and fading to white at the center, she finished with a spray to seal the makeup and give my face a high shine. Put these on while I do your hair, she said, handing me a pair of white satin gloves that reached up to my shoulders. As Julia styled my hair into long sausage curls pinned high on my head with a white lace band completing the look, she instructed me on my new duties. We entertain frequently, Julia explained as she led me through the house. You'll handle cleaning, cooking, laundry, and serving meals and refreshments. Additionally, you'll attend to both me and Diana personally. We also host many guests who enjoy having a submissive maid. You'll be one of them, Julia said as we entered the basement. When she turned on more lights, I was startled to find myself in what appeared to be a modern torture chamber. I tried to retreat, horrified at the thought of becoming its next occupant.